Welcome to the T2 Hubcast. Join Martin, Dave, Spencer and guests as they discuss all things personal and professional development. The T2 Hubcast, brought to you by the People Performance People.
Good morning and welcome to another T2 Hubcast with me, Dave Pendleton, and I'm here with
Martin Johnson.
The one and only.
Thank you, Dave. It's nice for you to do the intro for a change. Usually it's me, right? We're shaking things up.
Ooh, disruption.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely.
Okay, so I guess I wanted to trigger a podcast today, Martin, on the good old subject of feedback.
Right, feedback.
Because it's something that we talk about a lot with leaders, with managers. We talk about in every topic and subject that we deliver through leadership, management, sales, customer service, measurement, and so on and so on and so forth. And I think it's fair to say that there are quite a lot of people out there that struggle with not only giving feedback, but receiving feedback too. In fact, one of the topics that we deliver in a leadership day is the ability to receive feedback is high on the agenda if you want to be a successful leader, right?
Right, absolutely. And yeah, you make a really good point there straight away, that feedback. A lot of people know that feedback is hard to receive sometimes. In terms when you're on the receiving end of feedback, that is not always of a positive nature. Or I love the word constructive feedback, right? When you hear that term, I'm going to give you some constructive feedback. It's hard to receive, but what is undervalued, I think, or overlooked is that feedback is hard to give. If you're not if you've inherited that management position and have never had any real experience or training in giving them feedback, it can be hard to give because if you're trying to tackle underperformance or conflict or a situation
or delivering a difficult message,
yes, that is not comfortable. You can make a right hash of it as a manager. You can, and therefore it becomes ineffective. You lose your confidence, and feedback it therefore becomes uncomfortable to give. We also do a lot, Dave, on psychometric testing and profile, and we know that there are certain human beings out there who carry certain motivators where they absolutely hate being in the position where they've got to give negative news. Right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Their whole center is against that. They're amiable people. They're peace and harmony. They
Humanistic.
don't like... Yeah, absolutely. So I think the major point here, the first point to say is feedback is important. It's an imperative skill to master as a leader or a manager, because not only can it be received in a very negative way, but you can make a hash of it if you're not confident or aware of how to give feedback and the different types of feedback you can give, right?
Which brings us nicely to the model that you've just developed in terms of giving feedback. So what is the name for this model, Martin? Is it the feedback model?
Well, until we get a sexier name, Dave, we've gone with the feedback model.
Nice and concise though, right?
Yeah, and do you know what? It was triggered by a conversation with a customer who said, this might seem really basic, Martin, but we need your help. And I said, fire away. And they said, we want to do some work on feedback. And I said, right, that doesn't seem very basic. And then she's saying, yeah, but we need to get our managers to even understand what feedback is, the different types of feedback, and where and when it's appropriate to give the feedback. So it was almost like, can we create a model or a set way of working around just understanding the different types of feedback and how it can manifest, so I can at least be a bit more conscious when I'm doing it and organized, rather than just going in, with my own style. So it got me thinking, and we have a load of stuff on this, Dave, as you know. But I thought, yes, let's see if we can create a bit of a model where at least at a high level we can give what are the three main different types of feedback we can give somebody in the workplace. That's the first port of call.
Absolutely.
And then secondly, once we know that the three types of feedback, if you like, what are the 5 different ways or vehicles or situations that we'll find ourselves in that we can give those 3 types of feedback? And that will then form a model. So I know as a manager, for example, I can give 3 different types of feedback, and we'll go through them in a second. And actually I can do it in 5 different ways, right, or at 5 different points. And at least then managers and leaders will become a little bit more comfortable in either planning, giving spontaneous in the moment feedback, or making a better job of that those planned situations, pre-planned situations.
And being prepared.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So could you walk us through this model?
Yeah, I mean, I guess let's start with the three types of feedback you can give. And we've been really high level with this in terms of, when you break it right down and you give feedback to your employees, it will be of three different types, right? The first type of feedback you can give is some type of appreciation or recognition. It's positive feedback.
It's when somebody's done well.
Yeah. So that feedback is great. Everybody loves giving this first type of feedback, right?
Absolutely.
The nice message, the positive message, the recognition.
The easiest message, maybe.
It's the easiest message, right? It makes them feel great. It makes the recipient feel great. It makes you, the manager, feel great. And it's an easy type of feedback because very rarely will you give somebody positive reinforcement, appreciation, or recognition, and they will respond negatively. Some people are shy of it. Some people don't like it. I get it. But most times that will be a positive situation.
Well, I guess interestingly, I had a conversation with a leader that we work with fairly regularly about doing something similar with their team. And they said to me, do you know what, Dave? I think I would find that really difficult. I said, why? Are you not used to giving positive feedback? He said, well, it's not something we do very regularly. We don't celebrate success very regularly. And I think the first time I did it, most people would probably be quite suspicious about my motives.
Yeah, because that's sad, right? But that's
really
years.
sad.
That's years of a legacy of a culture which has not rewarded and recognised their
Just
people.
churning results.
So much so that when you do, it creates uncertainty or suspicion. What's going on here? Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that's sad, right? And we can think of many organisations where that happens, but most that we work with. They're not doing all they can, but they find it definitely more comfortable to give the praise, the recognition, the appreciation type of feedback. So that's feedback type one.
Mm-hmm.
The second type of feedback you can give is, we're not going to come on to negative just yet, or constructive, or whatever it might be. The second type of feedback you can get is what we call coaching and improvement. So it's not quite that you have done a fantastic job and I'm going to show my appreciation and recognize you and thank you and reward you. It's, listen, you're doing okay and it's a great effort. However, if you did X, Y, and Z, we could really drive the outcomes that we want. So we call this coaching and improvement. The first one is appreciation and recognition. The second type of feedback is coaching and improvement. Now, this should still be a positive experience.
Agreed.
And if you get this right and you use the right language, which is really important, you use the right language, then you can become a great coach to people by giving feedback.
Yeah.
So we're saying it's not underperformance, it's not poor, it's not misconduct, it's not anything we need to address. We're on the right track, or we're on a track. Now let's focus on this.
Sure.
And you can't be afraid to give coaching and improvement feedback. In fact, performance and your people fundamentally rely on that level of unambiguity, transparent guidance and advice. And your language is key, because where people go wrong, Dave, is where they try and give the coaching and improvement, but they use the wrong language and they focus on what they haven't done rather than what they need to do. And it's threat state stuff.
Yeah.
So as long as your positioning is always on, here's what you've done well, now let's focus on this, and not here's where you went wrong, it could have been better. You see already the two different types of connotations.
This is what I would have done.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah.
So feedback level 2 is coaching and improvement. And if done well, it's the most valuable of the three, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. That's an interesting perspective. And of course, as we know, successful leaders are very, very good and well skilled at the first two that you've mentioned. So what about type 3?
So type 3 is what we're calling evaluation of requirements. So I've been very selective with my words and very diplomatic with my words there, right? So let's just recap. If the first type of feedback is appreciation and recognition and reward, second is coaching and improvement, the third is evaluation of requirements. What we're saying there is something's going wrong. We need to stop. We need to evaluate the situation and address it and just realign what we require going forward.
Sure.
it's underperformance, right? It's when there's an issue. It's when somebody's skipping on the non-negotiables. It's when we have to stop in our tracks, evaluate the requirement again, and reset. And this is the most uncomfortable type of feedback, because it probably means that somebody's done something wrong. Somebody's something needs to be addressed. And that is going to instantly, potentially, between you, the manager, and the recipient, stoke that defensive response, that chimp-led response in the recipient that we talk about, that threat state. And this is the minefield. This is what managers want to avoid. This is where, again, language can go badly wrong. And it's where, if we don't get off to the right start in these type of conversations, it can be a completely counterproductive experience.
So do you think, in terms of the final type of feedback, do you think that, generally speaking, leaders out there package it incorrectly by using the wrong language, i.e., I'm about to deliver negative feedback?
Yes. I mean, there's two classic standpoints you can take on this, and we want you to try and take a third, right? You'll get the manager who approaches this evaluation of requirements, this underperformance or this issue piece of feedback in a nicey, I'm your friend way. So they will overcompensate to try and not have discomfort or discord.
Yeah.
So they'll pussyfoot around the conversation, Dave, and they'll set themselves up for a fall, because they'll try and soften the message, or they'll try and still be. And keeping rapport is really important on this, but you've still got to address the issue. If you skirt around the issue and it's not truly discussed and understood and agreed between the two parties, guess what? The issue ain't going to be fixed.
Yeah.
So I think managers who don't actually tackle the problem out of fear of conflict, discomfort, discord, get it wrong. However, you have the other manager who wants to lay down the law and deliver this message head on and fire a rocket across fire that shot across somebody's bow, right? And they go in the complete opposite extreme, where they just steamroller through the feedback. There's no filter on it. There's no conscious intelligence.
Yeah.
And all they're doing is they are completely either putting the person in a threat state, or they are absolutely leaving them with a level of uncertainty where they cannot rectify and perform to their peak. And people listening to this, we've all made these mistakes. You have, if you don't address this level of feedback correctly and you skirt around it, you're not going to get a result. And if you steam into it, you're going to get the wrong result.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does actually. And do you know what? Whilst I was listening to what you were saying there, I guess it kind of relates to another piece of our insight around the relationship principle.
Yeah, the
ratio principles.
Yeah.
So the basic theory there is that, if you have regular positive interactions with people, you almost earn the right to be able to have that one sort of corrective interaction that could be perceived negatively. But because you've got good relationships historically, somebody will take that from you. It becomes much easier to deliver, and then you ensure that the next interaction is a positive one. Whereas I guess if you're further down the ratio list, where you've got a history of negative or sort of in between interactions, which creates a different relationship ratio, it could be a much more difficult message to send, and the message will be received much more negatively.
Yeah. So absolutely, your the way a leader conducts themselves on a day-to-day basis over time casts the cultural shadow, right?
Yeah.
And they, for example, the leader who generally has a positive relationship with you and will absolutely give you 1 and 2, so the other 2 levels of feedback. If you're getting appreciation and recognition when it's due, and you're getting the right level of coaching and development when you need to, enhance upon things, then when it is time to come to this third level of feedback, which is the evaluation of requirements and a bit of critique or correction, you're more likely to take it, because the balance on the whole is there.
Absolutely.
Whereas what leaders often do is, if they miss the opportunity to feed back at 1 and 2, and they only feed back when situation 3 arises, guess what? You're fighting a losing battle already. It becomes a negative experience for the recipient.
It's your negative interactions which create the ratio of the
wrong relationship. So the ratio's out of kilter,
absolutely.
And therefore you're never going to be a great performance manager.
Yeah.
So Yeah, you're absolutely right, Dave. You've got to look at it holistically. And if you form the right behaviors and you take time to feedback across the whole 3 levels, then you're going to earn the right to tackle 3 when you need to.
Absolutely. All right, great. That clears up. I think that's brilliant. So they are the 3 types of feedback.
Yeah.
So in your model here, there are 5 situations in which those 3 types could fit into. So can you just walk us through those?
Yeah. So the first 2 steps, if you like, in terms of the feedback model is you can apply any of those 3. So appreciation, recognition, coaching and improvement, and evaluation of requirements. You can apply any of those 3 in 5 situations, right? 5 different situations. 2 of them are what we call situational, in the moment.
Yep.
And the other 3 are structured after the event, right?
Okay, yep.
So let's go through them one by one. The first type of level 1 type of feedback is spontaneous. So this is in the moment, something is happening, sure. I can feed back to you there and then before we've even finished. I can feed back there and then. So you might be delivering a presentation, you might be writing a report, working on a design, operating on the factory floor, on one of the machinery, and I can feed back to you there and then on how you're doing or what to do, etc. We call this spontaneous feedback. Yeah. So even spontaneous feedback can happen at levels 1, 2, or 3. So I can give you appreciation and recognition in the moment. Great job, Dave. Keep going. Yep. Right? I can give you coaching and improvement spontaneously in the moment. Listen, here's what you need to do. Try this. Or I can give you an evaluation of requirements in the moment. Dave, just stop a second. Dave, stop. What I need you to do is this. Yep. Right? Yep. So spontaneous feedback is when we give it in the moment as something's happening. That's level 1. Oh, yeah. Level 2, we call this the hot debrief. It's a military term.
Military term, right?
It is a military term, and it comes from the fact that whenever we conduct operations in the military, we were always fans of the hot debrief. So you would muster or gather straight after the exercise or the situation, and you would instantly give what we called a hot debrief. While it's live, while it's fresh in everybody's memories, we gather around and we debrief what just happened. So it's not quite spontaneous, but it's immediately after the event.
Yeah.
So, for example, you've got someone on a sales call. Let them, even if they're going wrong, you wouldn't give spontaneous feedback. Let them conduct the sales call. When the phone goes down, we do a hot debrief on that call. Yep. Here's what you did well. Here's where we could improve, right? So hot debrief is not quite spontaneous because the situation doesn't cater for it, but we want to hot debrief it immediately after. We don't want to wait for the review on Friday or to collect our thoughts. We want to hot debrief it in the moment.
Got you.
And again, you can do that for appreciation and recognition, for coaching and improvement, or for evaluation of requirements.
Okay, got you.
Third level is when we start to go above, we go out of situation and we go into a more structured type of feedback. So it's the one-to-one review. So the one-to-one review is we're not going to give a hot debrief, right? We're going to need to reflect, analyze, collect our thoughts on both parties, and we're going to meet Wednesday afternoon and we're going to have a half an hour and we're going to talk about this.
So I guess this is where we do a bit more preparation, a little bit more planning, potentially even using tools that we have within our business, electronic tools or paper-based tools, whatever it might be.
Yeah, absolutely. The manager themselves can take time to plan and reflect. They can also maybe provide 2 or 3 points up front to the recipient for them to think about and prep around how they think they did or what we're going to do going forward. So by the time you arrive at the feedback, it is just much more structured. You've had the thing with a hot debrief, Dave, is when the hot debrief or spontaneous, you're in the moment or you're straight after the moment, the emotions are high. You haven't had a chance to process everything that happened in a more rational, logical way. You're just having it there and then because it's situationally relevant. Sure. With a one-to-one, you've got a much more diligent process. So you can have a bit more of a after the incident. Some managers need to process something before they give feedback. Sure. And for them, the one-to-one review a few days after is a much better way of doing that.
And more likely documented in some way.
Yes, yeah.
And the next one?
Group review. So this is a similar thing, but anybody who is involved in it. So if it's just not featuring one person, if it was a team thing or there was multiple observers or people involved in whatever it is, then we want to do the same process a few days later, but as a group. And this is what we call a group review. But again, gives people time to structure and it gives you time to collect thoughts from everybody involved and everybody gets a say in that meeting, but it's a bit more of a group review. And the 5th and final level is what we call the appraisal type feedback review, which is a period. So it's much more structured, but it's over this 3-month period, this quarter, let's assess and feedback how you are doing, or over this 6-month period or 12-month period. So it's more of the traditional appraisal route. So you got five different situations of feedback: spontaneous there and then in the moment, hot debrief after the situation, but it's immediately after the situation. They're both situational. Then you have three others that are more structured: the one-to-one review, the group review, and the periodic appraisal. And don't forget, in all 5 of those situations of feedback, you can feedback any of the 3 types: appreciation, recognition, and reward, coaching, development and improvement, or evaluation of requirements. And just stop, right? Something needs correction. Something needs correcting here.
Sure.
And that is, for me, is a great high-level model for managers and leaders and organizations to just get an idea of how we're going to approach quality feedback. And you know what? It's giving managers the freedom to give a hot debrief, or to provide spontaneous, or to think, no, this needs to be in a few days' time. We need to reflect on this, right? But it also gets them thinking about the 3 types. Are they in balance? Are we getting the balance between appreciation, recognition, coaching and improvement, and then earning the right to correct or challenge through an evaluation of requirements?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
It can't be just stacked in one or the other. And that's the ratio you was talking about. So we're on a bit of a journey, aren't we, Dave, and a mission to talk to managers and organizations and provide training and development on this feedback model, because nobody ever really strips it down like this. Managers are left to deliver it in the way they want to deliver it.
Yeah, and I guess,
or via an appraisal once a year or twice a year.
And 9 times from 10, again, it's a skill that people are very rarely trained or taught. You know, they just sort of go into an organization, they're given a management position, and once every 3 months they have to do an appraisal on people, or once a year, disastrously, they have to do an appraisal on everyone. So they spend 2 weeks running around like headless chickens up to that day, gathering as much information and data on people's numbers and facts and figures and health and safety reports and attendance and so forth. And apparently that's what makes a good appraisal. Well, obviously we've got different ideas, right?
And you know what? Absolutely. And therefore, what managers end up doing is, if you think about the first 2 situations of feedback, spontaneous and hot debrief, most managers unconsciously are doing that every day in organizations, either on the shop floor or out on the site or in the office, or, whatever it might be. They're giving that spontaneous feedback or the hot debrief straight after, but they're not doing it consciously. So the words they use, the positioning they use, it can trigger people into a threat state if they're not consciously aware of how to do it effectively. The other thing is, sometimes they're giving spontaneous and hot debrief feedback when it should be more of a one-to-one review. It should take time to go, it's not right to feed this back here and now.
Yeah, sure.
Let me just reflect, let me gather my thoughts, and let me speak to this person about it tomorrow or the day after. So what we're trying to get here is we're trying to stop those initial emotional, spontaneous situations that don't serve managers well, and that give HR departments a nightmare, because they're trying to clean up situations where we've completely insulted, disengaged, or said something in the heat of the moment we shouldn't have, only because we're passionate about performance and doing our jobs or correcting what's going wrong, but we haven't dealt with that very well. So I guess there is a time and a place for spontaneous feedback and hot debrief feedback, but sometimes it's not the right thing to do. And we need to, through this training and through this model, we need to just give them that intelligence to where they pick and choose what type of feedback and the situation it requires.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like situational leadership, but for feedback, right? Absolutely.
Sure.
But, that's what we want to do with it. And I think it's an easy model to understand. And I think if we can arm managers with the knowledge of this, then they're going to make less mistakes, build more allies, and most importantly, give the most appropriate feedback in the most appropriate situation.
Absolutely. So if that's really resonating with the people that are listening, it is available on the hub as a pathway, and the model is attached to the pathway, so you can go out there, have a look at it, maybe make some notes on it, and really start to consider this the next time you feel some kind of feedback appropriate.
Yeah, and you know what? If you are a hub member listening to this and you have a bunch of managers in your organization who could really do with a bit more of a deep dive in this, then contact us, because we're more than happy to run workshops on the feedback model, take managers. Because the other thing, Dave, is we've explained the 3 types and the 5 different scenarios, but all of a sudden then you've got to go, okay, how do we give type 1 in a spontaneous situation? How do you give type 2 in a spontaneous situation? Right, let's move on to hot debrief. So there's a little bit of work to do on giving them some hints and tips on that.
Sure.
But like Dave says, on the hub already, you've got feedback, how to create a positive feedback culture in the pathways, and you've also got the feedback model and the diagrams and everything on there to have a look at as well. So check it out. Hopefully that's give you some food for thought. And any last thoughts from you, Dave, on that?
No, love it. Yeah, nice and easy to understand. I think it'd be really useful for the people that can access it on the hub. So thanks ever so much, Martin. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Dave.
You're welcome.
And we'll be back again shortly with another T2 Hubcast. Cheers, Dave.